The doorbell rang, and when I checked the monitor, my FIL's face appeared. "Hi, Phil. My critically ill Phil is here, why?" I immediately called my husband. "Yo, Chison. Where are you right now?" "In Dad's hospital room. Don't call." It finally dawned on me that my husband had been deceiving me. Using family to deceive someone, I can't forgive him anymore. My name is Madeline, 32 years old. I had an arranged marriage with Tyson, who runs a business, and we have a 1-year-old son named Sean. Our house is a single-family home with a garden, built over 20 years ago. This house was owned by my wealthy in-laws, but we started living here 5 years ago. It's a 2-story, Western-style house with bay windows and a semicircular balcony. It's a stylish and eye-catching mansion. However, it had many rooms, each with heavy doors, and numerous steps which became hard for my in-laws as they aged. Thus, they moved to a condo with shared amenities that were easier to manage. The old house has stairs and many steps. The garden is big and hard to maintain. It's difficult for the elderly. Since we moved to the condo, it's easier to get around and clean, and my back pain has improved. But it's hard to give up the house we lived in for so long. It's hard to maintain, but it helps if you use it even temporarily. It's such a lovely house. We're so happy to live here. Thank you. I often have to leave for work, but if Madeline is okay with it, that's fine. Out of respect for my in-laws' memories in this house, I took good care of it. Although it's old, I ensured it's clean and comfortable. I never missed a day cleaning it, and I planted flowers and herbs in the garden to enjoy the scenery. I loved having tea time in the garden with my in-laws whenever they visited. Oh, the tea Madeline makes is so good. You've kept the garden so beautiful. Isn't cleaning hard? The garden was always beautiful, and I enjoy cleaning. It's a luxury home for me. I lost my parents early on and was alone. Tommy, my husband's parents were like my own. They looked after me ever since my days working for their company as an employee, and eventually hoped I'd marry their son. Tyson, who would soon have the family business, was out of my league. At first, I consistently declined marriage proposals, but Tyson proposed a relationship leading to marriage. "I've been interested since Dad said he trusts you. Will you go out with me? If you're okay with me." Tyson was always cheerful and kind, not minding my background. We got married amidst the blessings of everyone around us. Afterwards, as Tyson took over parts of his father's business, he became busier and often came home late. Upon getting married, I quit my job to support him as a dedicated wife, always looking after his meals and appearance. Having Madeline as my wife is truly a blessing. I couldn't have done so much without you. Though, thank you for always flattering me. Let me make you some good tea. Toe, you're blushing. You're teasing me again. Well, but it's how I truly feel. Though Tyson was a workaholic, he always showed gratitude for the help he received. Eventually, I became pregnant. Fortunately, I had mild morning sickness and could continue my usual chores. Ignoring the concerns of my in-laws and my husband, I was as active as ever, pottering around in the garden and doing the housework and laundry. We had a baby boy. We named him Sean. After his birth, my milk came over now and then to help with childcare. My Phil drove to our house, which took about 20 to 30 minutes, quite frequently. Having no family of my own, I deeply appreciated the help of my husband's parents. I was struggling with my first experience of childcare, trying not to be a burden to my husband. Sean's nightly crying were particularly challenging, and I was worried about my husband not getting enough sleep. There were times when I would comfort Sean all night long in the kitchen, away from the bedroom. Seeing me like this, my husband said, "There's an apartment near my office that I can rent on a weekly basis. I'll stay there. It's a baby's job to cry, right? I'm more worried about you overdoing it for my sake and wearing yourself out. I'm sorry for being such a bad wife." Hey now, what are you talking about? Babies won't cry forever, right? It's just for now. I thought he was right. Our parenting journey had just begun. Except for weekends, my husband began staying at the apartment. With him not around at night, I no longer fretted over Sean's crying. And surprisingly, Sean's nighttime crying began to diminish, making childcare much easier. On weekends, my husband came home. He seemed more worn out than before. Every day, I prepared his favorite dishes to show my gratitude for his hard work. Sean's growth was remarkable, and he was always in a good mood when his father came home. He seemed to recognize his father even though he wasn't around much. Whenever my husband played with our son, he looked genuinely happy. "Come on, say daddy. It's daddy. Dardara. Good boy, you're a genius. Say you love daddy. Dardara." The weekend interactions between father and son were heartwarming, and I felt truly blessed. However, I began to feel a slight discomfort with my husband. It was hard to pinpoint, but sometimes he seemed distant when I spoke, or lost in thought. I was sure it wasn't about work. I was certain about that. By the time Sean was 10 months old, he was mainly eating solid foods, and his nightly crying had mostly stopped. I could sleep soundly again, and thought it might be time for my husband to give up the apartment. "Isn't it time to end your apartment stay?" "Huh. No, yay, maybe. Sean hardly cries at night anymore." "Right, yay, maybe I should." His response seemed somewhat hesitant. Lately, he sometimes wouldn't come home even on weekends, citing work as a reason. And he often didn't answer my calls. When he was home on the occasional weekend, he was constantly on his phone. One day, I noticed a strange piece of clothing mixed in with my husband's belongings. It was a small white blouse that wasn't his size. From the placement of the button, it was clearly a woman's. I was responsible for all his clothing purchases, so there was no mistaking it. The blouse was conspicuously mixed in with his underwear. I felt a cold sensation throughout my body. There seemed to be another woman in my husband's life. She seems like the troublesome type who insinuates her presence everywhere. I felt anger towards my husband, but for Sean's sake, I needed to act calmly. If I let my emotions take over and we end up divorcing, Sean would be deprived of his father. First and foremost, I needed to find out who his mistress was. No doubt, the place where he's having the affair is the apartment he's renting. I wanted to stake it out, but it's tough with a baby like Sean. I don't even have a spare key to the apartment, so I can't get in. For now, it seems difficult for me to catch him in the act. Every weekend when Tyson returns, there are unfamiliar clothes mixed in with his luggage. Tyson is clueless about his own affairs. He probably doesn't even realize what his mistress is doing. I wanted him to move out of that apartment as soon as possible, so I executed a plan. "Hey, maybe I should go to the apartment you're renting." "Whoa." Tyson, startled, let out a weird sound. Sean doesn't need constant attention anymore, so I thought I could clean and do laundry there. Hearing this, Tyson seemed very flustered. No need for cleaning. Someone's already doing it for me, you know, a cleaning lady. You don't need to bother. Everything's fine." He was so panicked he wasn't even aware he was giving himself away. I bet that girl he mentioned is the one slipping those unfamiliar undershirts and ties into his bags. After expressing my interest in visiting multiple times, Tyson quickly vacated the apartment. My plan worked. I bet his mistress was frustrated. It lifted my spirits a bit. However, afterwards, Tyson started to have business trips every weekend. And when he returned from these trips, once again, there were unfamiliar items in his luggage. This time, there were cosmetics like lipstick and eyeshadow, and long strands of hair attached to his clothes. His mistress really wanted to make her presence known. Rather than looking elated from his affair, Tyson seemed a bit worn out. Then one day, an unknown woman called our house. "Hello, you're the CEO's wife, right? Do you know about me?" I had a gut feeling that she was my husband's mistress. I quickly hit the record button. "May I ask who's calling?" "Here, who do you think it is?" "If this is a prank call, I'm hanging up." "Just wait a minute. So, you grew up in an orphanage, huh? And you managed to marry the CEO. What do you mean by that?" "Just what I said. You think some nobody like you deserves to live in that mansion. You, with your shady background, should just leave." The woman hurled insults at me and then hung up. I was scared and thought the only option was to consult with my in-laws. I didn't want to worry them, but I felt vulnerable handling this alone. However, when I called my in-laws' house, no one picked up. Their cell phones were off and I couldn't reach them. A while later, Tyson called. He told me my father-in-law had been hospitalized. I was shocked and said I'd come to the hospital, but my mother-in-law who was there with him took the phone and said, "They'll be running various tests on him." He's likely to be hospitalized for about a week. You have little Sean to look after, so it's best if you don't come. Your father-in-law himself said he wouldn't want to put you through the trouble, so just wait at home. I know you're worried, but please listen to Mom. I'll call you later." I considered my in-laws to be like my own parents. I was extremely concerned, but ensuring my father-in-law's rest was the top priority. Holding Sean close, I told myself, let's hope Grandpa gets better soon. The following day, I received another call from that woman. Well, you're still at that mansion, huh? Didn't I tell you to leave? I have no reason to listen to you. Do you think it's okay to talk to me like that? I'm going to be the future CEO's wife, the mistress of that mansion. What? You and your little brat shouldn't be in such a place with your lowly background. If you don't want trouble, get out now. I was paralyzed with fear. Later, I got a call from my husband about my father-in-law's condition. He told me he was in a critical state and he'd be staying at the hospital, so he wouldn't be home for a while. Listen up. Don't call me again. When we have an update on his release, I'll call you. Got it. Promise. It seemed urgent, as my husband's voice sounded strained. While I was worried about my father-in-law's condition, I was also frightened by the woman my husband was cheating with. I had another sleepless night. The next day, my doorbell rang. When I checked the monitor, it was showing my father-in-law dead. Why was my father-in-law, who was supposed to be in critical condition, here? I opened the door and welcomed him in. He looked just fine. Are you okay? I thought you were still in the hospital. Yay, it was just anemia. I'm all good now. Your mother-in-law told me you were worried, so I came right after I was discharged. Turns out, my father-in-law had been feeling dizzy lately and found out he had mild anemia 3 days ago. He underwent a colonoscopy and they found a polyp. He also had worsening hemorrhoids that were bleeding, causing the anemia. After the colonoscopy, he had a procedure called a polypectomy and was good to go. Oh, so, you had an issue with your colon and your rectum. Well, Madeline, I felt a bit awkward discussing issues regarding my rear with you. Sorry for causing any distress. At the same time, I was relieved, but then I remembered about Tyson. By the way, where's Tyson now? I thought he was staying with you. What? He left right after signing the documents before my tests. He hasn't even visited me. Hold on, Madeline, you look pale. What happened? I was mortified. I quickly dialed Tyson's number. Where are you right now? I'm in my dad's hospital room. Don't call me. He hung up immediately. That's when I realized Tyson had deceived me. The reason was, of course, to hide his affair. My father-in-law, sensing something was off, listened to my story. I told about my husband having an affair. And when I played the recorded calls from the mistress who called the day before and 2 days ago, my Phil let out a groan. Madeline, I can't believe it, but that voice sounds familiar. Who is she? She's a former secretary from when I was the CEO. I can't believe she turned out to be this malicious. I can't believe he cheated with her. It's unforgivable. And she called you of lowly background. Your parents are respectable people. I won't stand for such insults towards them. I was puzzled that my father-in-law's anger was more about the insult to my parents than Tyson's affair. How do you know about my parents? 3 days later, Tyson returned from his trip to find the house locked with a for sale sign. Sean and I had already moved to a new, safe house arranged by my in-laws. All of Tyson's belongings had been sent to a storage facility. What's going on? Explain this to me. You better ask yourself that. You know, don't you? You're talking about Sonia from the secretary department, right? My father-in-law told me about her. Huh. Dad knows too. I thought he was in the hospital for a week. I don't want to talk to you anymore. You should hear the rest from your parents. Saying that, I hung up the phone. It wasn't surprising that Tyson was shocked because our house had actually been sold. This was a suggestion from my father-in-law. The content of Sonia's phone call was overly threatening, and her obsessive attachment to our house was eerie. My father-in-law was worried she might harm me or Sean. He urged me to move out as soon as possible. I was stunned by the unexpected proposal from my father-in-law. This house holds many memories, but what truly matters is Madeline and Sean. If it's for protecting you both, I believe your mill will understand. My mother-in-law was also shocked after hearing the situation from my father-in-law. We promised to make Madeline happy. That darn son of mine. It's dangerous to stay in that house. Let's sell it for Madeline and Sean's safety. Why are you both so kind to me? I'm just a daughter-in-law. Madeline, actually, back in the day, your parents helped us during a tough time. Our business was failing. We even thought of taking our own lives along with our son. I was surprised by my father-in-law's confession. Your father, despite his own hardships, gave us financial aid. Thanks to that, our business got back on track. We wanted to repay that favor and looked for you. My parents both passed away when I was in middle school. They were ill. There's nothing for you to feel guilty about. No, we heard they had a tough life after helping us. We kept searching for you and finally found you at a foster home. But we thought you might hold a grudge. I don't resent anyone. Despite the tough times, my parents gave me lots of memories. In the foster home, I received a generous scholarship, so I had no problems with school. I paused, realizing something. I had received a no-payback scholarship from a certain economic association. Thanks to it, I was able to study in high school and follow my interests in college. Could it be the ones who funded that scholarship were? So it was the two of you. You were my secret benefactors. Even as I faced the risk of divorcing Tyson, I got to understand the love my in-laws, who supported me as an orphan, had for me. Later on, Tyson, who used an important family member to hide his affair, was severely reprimanded by his parents. The affair began when Sonia from the secretary department helped Tyson, who was having a tough time living by himself at the apartment. When Tyson offered to repay her kindness, she confessed her feelings for him, and they ended up having a fling. Tyson's grateful nature backfired on him. He deeply regretted it and tried to end things multiple times. Each time, Sonia would hint at suicide or threaten to harm me or our son, Sean. My father-in-law, the founder of Tyson's company, quickly shut down Tyson's excuses, saying he should clean up his own mess. Learning that the luxurious mansion was no longer Tyson's, Sonia ran off. Behind the scenes, my father-in-law had her transferred to a remote location. Now she lives in a run-down apartment, continuously paying the compensation I demanded. I haven't divorced Tyson yet. Honestly, there are things I can't forgive, but he seems genuinely devastated about not seeing Sean. He keeps apologizing to me. I notice my anger towards Tyson gradually fading. My in-laws promise to support me as if I were their own daughter, even if I decide to divorce. I believe I have the strength to forgive Tyson's weaknesses and protect our son's happiness. I'm taking my time to decide whether we can rebuild our relationship as a couple.